Hello. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to show and animate dialogue. So if you click, it's going to animate the dialogue one by one, one character at a time. But also if you click it, it'll also finish the dialogue completely. All right, to get started, let's create a new scene. So we're going to go up, hit this plus icon. And now we're going to create a user interface node. And then we're going to rename this control node to dialog prototype. And then let's save this, Control S, and I'm going to save it into my prototype folder. You guys can throw it wherever you guys need. I'm going to save it like this. Okay, and so first things first, let's create a label node. Label. This is where we're going to display our dialogue, okay? So let's go into the text property and just type in something random. I'm going to do I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4. Yes, sir. And then we're gonna let's create a timer. Create that. And let's look at the timer real quick. The wait time, we're gonna change it to something small. We're gonna do no, we'll just leave it as is, okay? Auto start, 1 shot. By default, the timer will automatically restart, right? We want this timer to just run once. And then we're going to create a script right here, dialog prototype. And I'm going to save it into my prototype folder. You guys can probably save it into your scripts folder. Create. And so right here, let's add this label node. And let's also add the timer. I used control, click, and drag. And then I'm going to call this node connections or references, and then we're going to have something for variables, and then finally we're going to start adding our functions. Function ready, and then I'm going to pass this initialization. Cool. So what are we going to look at? Let's take a look at the label node. And inside the label node, we're going to see something pretty interesting, which is visible characters right here. This is the property that we're going to change to show kind of like our label animating. Let's create a new function and call it animate label. Returns void. And then we're going to pass this. Cool. Inside animate label, we're going to increment up the visible characters. So what we're going to do is label dot visible characters plus equals 1. And what this is going to do is it's just going to increment the visible characters just by 1, right? So we can do this manually just to see what this looks like. It's at -1 right now, which means it displays all of the text. So if we increment it by 1, this is what's going to happen. And then if we do it one more time, and we have to keep going. And so this is what our script is going to automate for us. Okay, so let's reset that again by hitting that reset button. Go back to our script. And so we know that we can't just do this once, right? We need to loop this around constantly. So how do we do that? We're going to do that with our timer that we created. So let's go right here, and then we're going to do timer.start. And this is why we don't want it to auto start, because we want to control the start basically when we animate the label. So we're going to go back into the timer node and change the wait time to something small, like 0.1 seconds. And then what we have to do is we also have to connect the timer signal, timer.connect. Timer, and then you have to actually put in the signal that you want to connect. Timer.timeout, and then connect to a method. And the method we're going to connect it to here is animate label. Alright, so we have to throw the animate label into our actual ready function. So let's do that as well. We're going to connect the timer up top, and then we're going to run animate label. So once we enter the scene, we're going to connect the signal, and then we're going to actually run it. And then it's going to start the timer every time this finishes. So it looks like that. And I guess we're done. Nah, we still have a ways to go. So let's see. from here, what we're going to do is let's create a button. We don't want this to start right away, right? We want to control when the dialogue actually shows. The button is just what I'm using, but it could be so many different things that you can use to start your dialogue. So let's see, button, and let's add this node up top, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go on this node, go to node, and connect the signal to the top right here. And right here on button pressed, we're going to do animate label. Okay, so now when we press this button, it's going to start the dialogue, which means that we don't have to start the dialogue when we initialize. We're going to save that. And then we're going to go to our 2D scene to look at what this looks like. The button is on top of the label, so let's move the button down. Go into the inspector tab and let's fill it with some text. Start dialogue. So let's go back to our script. Okay, so let's take a look at what our dialogue script does right now. So when we enter the scene, the dialogue is already showing. So let's hide that to begin with. And then when we click it, it's gonna go, right? Let's add a couple more lines of dialogue. Let's see how we can cycle through. So when we initialize, we're gonna do label.visible is equal to false. And you know what? Actually, rather than hiding the label, let's do label.text and let's just change it to an empty string. And then let's create a variable dialogue array, which is going to hold all the dialogue components that we want. And then I'm also going to create a dialogue index with this, which is going to keep track of what line of dialogue we're in. So let's see, this is going to start at 0, we're going to initialize at 0, and it is a type of integer. This is an array. And inside our dialogue array, we're going to do something like, hi, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then it's spelled 4. Okay, and then okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like this. Okay, so now we've got 3 lines of dialogue. So now let's go from one to the next to the next. Inside animate label, label visible characters plus equals 1, right? We're gonna have to feed it text. So label.text is equal to the array and then the dialogue index. So now we're feeding it the first index, which is 0 for our dialogue array. So it's going to start with this text right here, which is perfect. And then it's going to increment the letters one by one by one. Let's run that real quick just to see how it works. Hi, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when we press it, it doesn't do anything else. Okay. So now, once we finish, we want to increment the dialogue index, right? So how do we do that? Okay, so let's add an if statement right here. If, and let's look at the label node again. There's this visible ratio right here. If visible ratio equals 1, then we want to do something. Oh, label.visible ratio, there we go. And so let's look at this visible ratio, go back to this right here, and if we increment our visible characters, you're going to notice this visible ratio increases, right? And it's going to equal 1 once we show all our visible characters, like this. So not only does it have a visible ratio of 1 when its visible character is 25, it's also like that for visible characters -1. So this is going to help us so that we can determine, hey, the entire line has been shown. So if visible ratio is 1, then we're going to have to increment the dialogue index. Dialogue index plus equals 1. Alright guys, so if we run this like this, what's going to happen? Well, we start the dialogue and everything looks like it's going well, and then We're going to notice that it does switch the lines of the dialogue, but it actually keeps the visible character position, which is something that we don't want to happen. So let's fix this one by one. It starts with if label visible ratio equals 1, right? But we don't want to start the timer if we're starting a new line of dialogue. So let's finish this up with an else statement, and then let's move the timer into an else. We're only going to increment the characters right here if we have not completed the actual text line. So that makes sense, I think, and we can rerun it just to make sure it looks like what we're expecting it to. So at least now we go one by one, right? But we still have the issue of the entire line getting shown. So how do we do this? Well, we have this dialog index that keeps track of what line we're on, from 0 to 1 to 2. And we're incrementing it whenever we have completed the line, aka when our visible ratio is equal to 1. So let's use a setter inside here. So we're going to do set value set value colon exclamation mark, boys, dialog index equals value. And then from here we're going to do label.visible characters is going to equal -1. We are resetting the line, but it is still showing everything. It's just resetting the visible characters from whatever it was, 25 or something, back to -1. So if we run it now, we see the first line complete, and then we press the button, and now it goes all the way through from 0, all the way through, and then we press it one more time, and it's going to give us an error because we've run out of indices. Jeez, English. At the start of this animate label, we're going to have a if statement. If dialog index is greater than or equal to dialog array dot size, then what we're going to do is we're going to return. And I'm going to use a return statement, but it's basically whatever you want to do to get out of your cutscene or your dialogue or whatever. And that's only if the dialog index that we keep incrementing is larger than the amount of lines inside this dialog array, aka the size of the array. So I think it should be greater than or equal to, but let's test it out. So hi, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's spelled 4. And then okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. And now it doesn't do anything anymore. Okay, so that's good. And I think the final thing we want to do is maybe on button pressed. So let's have it so that when you click it, it shows all the text if it's still cycling through. We're going to use a property from the timer, which is going to be isStopped. So we're going to do something like if timer.isStopped. And this isStopped returns true if the timer is stopped or has not started yet. So remember, our timer is a one-shot timer, which means that whenever the timer completes, it's going to be stopped. If it's not running anything, then we want to animate the label. Otherwise, what we're going to do is label.visible characters label.visible characters, and we're going to set it to -1. Or actually, we don't even have to do this because we're setting this up here, right? We're just going to increment the dialog index plus equals 1. And so this should technically finish the entire line, because by incrementing the index, we're actually setting the visible characters to -1 as well. So if we start the dialogue and we press it, dialog index +1, but we're going to have to stop the timer as well. Let's go. Let's go. And with that, we've got a working dialogue system. I'm not 100% happy with it, especially there's like some inefficiencies with the dialogue text constantly getting reassigned whenever we run the animate label function, but it is okay for right now, and I want to keep the video shorter than longer, so hopefully this was helpful to you guys. If it was, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.